The EU judges want to control the UK after Brexit. Boris Johnson and Donald Trump could impose extensive tariffs on the EU. And we talk about Friday's Brexit celebrations. Hello everyone, welcome to another show. We have 2 days to go till Brexit. As you know, over the last few days we've been trying to find memes to show the Remainers celebrating Brexit. Today we have Emily Thornberry. 2 days to go till People's Brexit. So as you can see, she's very happy about this and she can't wait to get a couple of drinks and celebrate freedom. Now, we have some serious news today because the European Union, as you might have heard over the last couple of weeks, they've been coming up with some demands. First, they demanded us to have an extension of the transition period, and Boris Johnson said no. Then they said they want to have access to our fisheries for 25 years. Government said no. And there's a new demand. They want the ECJ, the European Court of Justice, and the EU judges to have full say over the UK's affairs even after Brexit. Because their argument is that even with a trade deal, we want this trade deal for the European Court of Justice to be the judge and be the referee between the two sides. Now, this makes absolutely no sense because the ECJ is not an independent body between the EU and the UK. It's basically a referee that's coming from one side. It's a very one-sided affair. Now, we have to kind of follow up on this because we have the government actually already kicking off. So the European Court of Justice have now said that this is the only way we could do it. We will be the referee between the two sides after a trade deal. Now, the former Brexit minister, David Jones, has said that you would be having disputes arbitrated by the court of one of the parties, and it is a court that has got a political function, which is to advance the interests of the European Union. The EU has to realise that it would be completely unacceptable, and if they want to press that, then there is no purpose in continuing the negotiations. And yes, he says that we should basically walk away from the negotiations. The documents circulated to Eurocrats have set out the proposals that call for the European Court of Justice to be involved in deciding if Britain has broken any of the rules that it signs up to in the next phase. Well, I'm glad that the Conservatives are taking a strong stance on this. Boris Johnson has clarified many times that he would not want to have the ECJ to have any say post-transition. Obviously, during the transition period for the next 11 months, we're still technically tied to an extent when it comes to ECJ ruling, but not with any new directives. It's just the existing rules that we have. But after that, either we sign a trade deal, but according to the government, they will only do it if there is no one-sided judge or referee, basically ECJ, ruling over us, or we'll be walking away on WTO terms. So it's the ball is in their court. We have to see what they will say in the next few months. But there is a divide because you have Ursula von der Leyen, who is the head of the European Commission, who has, with all her bluffs and straight talking, she wants to have a friendly negotiations that are going through and the relationship in the future. But on the other hand, you got people like Varadkar from Ireland and other places who are kicking off saying, no, we have to be strong, the UK should be punished. And yeah.
And there's a bit of a tension within the 27 at the moment, I think, because on the one hand, you've got the whole Ursula von der Leyen, all the bad stuff's behind us, let's look to the future and make a beautiful friendship between the UK and the EU, it's all going to be brilliant. And then you've got people going, well, hang on though, Boris Johnson says this is going to be a partnership of sovereign equals. That just can't be the case because they're not equals, because one is a giant global trading bloc and the other is a relatively smallish country. So you've got that tension between the Ursula von der Leyen, let's all be lovely and friends and constructive, yeah, approach, and then the Varadkar approach of, well, actually, let's get real about the power dynamics here.
Now, the problem with the EU and people like Varadkar is that they don't understand that we now have the upper hand because we are going to have a good relationship, not just with the US, but with South Korea, with Japan, with hopefully Australia and Canada, and economically we'll be better off. Now, there are potential options for the UK and the US to impose strong tariffs on EU goods if the EU don't play ball. So we have a situation where America and the UK could impose £47 billion tariffs on goods that comes from Europe. According to Bloomberg, that previous exports that come from the EU member states to Britain are worth 301 billion euros. And this is back in 2018, and 47 billion could be exposed to new tariffs. That's about 16% of those goods that could be exposed to new tariffs. The comprehensive list includes around 500 items, from cheese to tires, with all being subject to rates and quotas. And Germany will take the biggest blow with almost 19 billion euros worth of goods that will be subject to tariffs should the UK not strike a deal with the EU. Now, I'm not a protectionist. I'm a free trader. I would rather have open free trade with the whole world. And but sometimes in negotiations you have to take a strong stand. This is a Trumpian style of negotiations, the art of the deal. And sometimes you have to go tough to get what you want. If you take the approach of Theresa May between 2016 and 2019, well, it doesn't work. We know it doesn't work, because if you just go out there and say, well, we're desperate, we need you, so whatever you give us, we just say yes. Well, we've seen what the European Union have done with that. Whereas on the other hand, you look at the track record of President Trump when he negotiated with China, with North Korea on a more political level, and other countries as well, with Mexico. He forced them to come back to the table by basically bluffing with tariffs, but it's a semi-bluff, but he actually takes it way too seriously. He actually does impose tariffs. Tariffs are not good, obviously, but it's a tactic that you could use in negotiations, and I'm glad and I hope that the UK government keep the same strategy when it comes to the EU, but also with any other negotiations that we have with the US, with Canada. We can't really go to President Trump and say, well, we really want a trade deal with the US, so you give us anything and we'll say yes. We also have to be strong with any other country. Now, all of this said, Ursula von der Leyen is now softening her approach, but also David Sassoli, the head of the European Parliament, who, when he first came to the job a few months ago, he was also very strong and stable. Now he's changing his tune. He now speaks of pain of the UK leaving the EU. Yeah, David Sassoli has now spoken out about the pain of Brexit, and but has denied that Brussels is jealous of Britain actually striking its own deals with America and other places. Now, the head of the European Parliament, David Sassoli, has made these comments that obviously he wants to reach a good post-Brexit free trade agreement, but he said it will take time. Now, speaking to the CNN, he said that to think of London being far from Brussels and Rome and Paris, there's certainly pain involved in that. But we have to respect the will of the British citizens, and a new chapter in our relations with the UK is opening. Now, Mr. Sassoli has also said that it's a very complicated agreement after 45 years and more of cooperation. We have to bear that in mind when we look at the future relationship. It's very, very intensive work that we have to do. I don't think that anybody could think that we could do that in a couple of months. Now, nobody actually suggested a couple of months. You have 11 months, and you know what we have to do because everything's already in place. And it's not like we have to start our negotiations from scratch. There's a difference between Canada negotiating with the EU and UK negotiating with the EU. But obviously they're all scared. But as I said, he also has mentioned that he's not really jealous that the UK will be creating a new relationship with America. Sure, you're not jealous. But yesterday and today marks the British MEPs leaving the European Parliament for the last time. So everyone has been celebrating and drinking their champagne. I'm guessing free champagne from the EU, I don't know. And we had Dan Hannan, who is one of the sound Brexiteer MEPs, who has been there for years and years, making his final speech.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. This is going to be the last speech I make in this chamber. It's difficult to recall the world when I was first elected. There was no wiki, no Wi-Fi. You had to get your tickets through a travel agent. They would come in physical form, and our post arrived in envelopes with stamps on. An awful lot of things have changed, but one thing that hasn't changed is the direction of this chamber and the other institutions. Despite referendums against closer integration in the Netherlands, in France, in Denmark, in Ireland, in Greece, and of course in the United Kingdom, it's still full speed ahead to closer and closer integration. And it was that, ultimately, that I think made inevitable that Britain would take a different trajectory. So as we leave, let me wish the many friends I've made here, including the committed believers in a federal Europe, every possible success.
And in other good news, as you can see, the Union flags are now officially flying outside Buckingham Palace, and in Westminster we are all prepared for Friday to celebrate our freedom. If you want to get your UK Independence Day t-shirts, we still have some left. The link is in the description, so check it out. Also, we have various other designs as well. Now on Friday we are going to be in Parliament Square, massive Brexit celebrations with senior Brexiteer activists and everybody who had been working so hard to make this happen. There are also going to be celebrations across the country in various cities and towns. We are going to be letting you know the plan, but obviously on Friday hopefully I will see some of you in central London. And if you haven't joined us yet, make sure you subscribe and click on the bell next to it so you get notified. We have a daily show at 5:45 p.m. I'm Tousi, and I'll see you guys tomorrow with a new video.